Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Productions channel here at YouTube, and welcome to another album of the week. This is episode number 188. Today I am going headlong straight into Loose and Lethal, the cult classic 1983 debut from new wave of British heavy metal legends Savage. Originally released through the infamous Ebony Records label sometime in 1983. So since this album is seeing its 40th anniversary this year, thought I might just celebrate this stone cold classic early. So let's begin, shall we? So, the story of Savage begins in Mansfield, Nottinghamshire, England in the year of 1978. When a young Chris Bradley recruited the Dawson brothers, Andy and Simon. Though Chris wanted Simon, however, Simon couldn't be without Andy, so they had to be both recruited as a package. Soon then, Andy Bradbury came into the fold, but for some unexplained reason, Andy Bradbury left, and soon was replaced by Wayne Renshaw. This would round out the lineup that would soon record their very first demo recording. After the 3-track demo in 1979, Simon Dawson would leave and then would be replaced by Dave Lindley. This lineup only lasted for one demo recording in 1980, which then led them to being featured on the infamous Scene of the Crime split LP, again in 1981. Which is where Metallica first heard Let It Loose and Dirty Money. Then Dave Lindley would leave the band as well. He would go on to join, I think, another new wave of British heavy metal band, I think by the name of Dawn Trader. In his replacement is Mark Brown. This came about in the late producer's Daryl Johnson's concerted sitting room in a Hull terraced house. This is where things start to come into place. After recording their very first 7-inch release for their Ebony Records debut, the Ain't No Fit Place 7-inch with the China Run as the B-side, that would get dropped sometime in 1982. Again, with the main A-side being featured on Ebony Records compilation record titled Metal Fatigue, the band would then lay down the rest for what would become their very first full-length record, the now legendary Loose and Lethal. So finally, here we are. The album here was recorded at the Ebony Studios in Hull, England, then released sometime in 1983. The album contains, of course, about 8 tracks and clocks in about the length of 34 minutes and 34 seconds. So these 8 tracks are beginning with obviously some classics here. Let It Loose, Cry Wolf, Berlin, Dirty Money, Ain't No Fit Place, On the Rocks, The China Run, and then finally ending with White Hot. So that's all I need to tell you there as far as the track listing, and it's just classic from just the beginning. So, my introduction to Savage was pretty much through hearing Metallica's version of Let It Loose off the Ron McGovney rehearsal tapes. I had never even heard of Savage before, but man, I loved what I heard. That I just went off searching the band, and that was what led me to this classic. From the first notes of Let It Loose to then Cry Wolf and then Berlin, I was hooked. Only religiously, listening to this as a MP3 download in 2009, next to the first 2 Quiet Riot LPs with Randy Rhoads, I pretty much ate up every fucking note on this album. It was raw, it sounded rough, gravelly, sharp as a razor blade, but up to 2009, I really hadn't heard a whole lot of albums, really, that really sounded this rough, maybe besides Venom. So this album was a nice real treat to me. But besides the aforementioned tracks like Let It Loose, Cry Wolf, Berlin, and Dirty Money, there are also other cool scorchers on here. Again, like the China Run, On the Rocks, White Hot, and even the semi-sorta metal ballad in Ain't No Fit Place, which has a nice combination of like Judas Priest and Thin Lizzy. Again, just because of the melodies that are going on here and that sort of twin dual guitar attack that you really hear on this track. And you hear, again, even throughout the entire album, you get that twin guitar attack. Again, the dual guitar harmonies and all of that you really heard in like Judas Priest and Thin Lizzy. And of course, Iron Maiden. So there are just so much hooks on this album. Again, like I've also stated here, again, the dual guitar harmonies. This album is just a thrill ride from beginning to end. There really is not much filler in the way. It just speeds on right through smoothly without no breaks. By 2011, I had actually popped into Recycled Records to browse around, okay? I had found at least an original Neat Records pressing of Raven's Wiped Out. Then, of course, I found that first Mallet Head record, which, again, kind of a punk band. I think of what it had members, I think of Gangrene, I think they were called. I believe so. I'm not quite sure about that. But I know I think there's like a connection somewhere. Then searching through the CDs, I ended up finding, well, a copy of the 2001 Metal Blade repress of Loose and Lethal. Because really, like I've stated earlier, I only was listening to Loose and Lethal as an MP3 download, so I never really owned the album in itself. But by this time period, in 2011, again, getting both Wiped Out from Raven and that first Mallet Head record, getting an actual physical copy of Loose and Lethal, it made my day. And it sure made that trip back to my home in Susanville, again, it made it a blast. So I was just entertained throughout that entire drive, because it's a pretty long drive from Susanville, or like at least Reno to Susanville, or especially, then Susanville to Reno, whatever, an hour drive, okay? Maybe an hour and a half. And man, the minute, again, just having a copy finally on hand of Loose and Lethal from Savage, and just listening to it, it was fucking amazing. So, along with Diamond Head, Saxon, Sweet Savage, Tigers of Pantang, Blitzkrieg, and Raven, 2009 saw me discovering the new wave of British heavy metal. All I knew up to 2009 was just your typical Iron Maiden, Venom, and Def Leppard. Yes, Def Leppard. But because of Metallica, I was discovering stuff like Savage, and so I still have to thank Metallica for leading me to such a bona fide classic like Loose and Lethal. It just was a great discovery of mine. And again, I heard some of that stuff again back in 2008. And I was even discovering Angel Witch, which I actually kind of have to bring up as well. So I was just discovering some of these other new wave of British heavy metal bands. It was just opening, and it just opened up a whole doorway to the more obscure bands. So it just kind of, it all seems to start at Metallica. It all goes back to Metallica. So as much as people still shit on the band, honestly, you still kind of have to still give the tip of the hat to Metallica for leading you to bands like Blitzkrieg and so on, and Diamond Head, Sweet Savage, and Savage, and so on. You kind of have to give them, the tip of the hat, even Holocaust. So Metallica really were kind of the band that really for a newer generation, turning them on to the new wave of British heavy metal. And really, that's all I need to really say there about just thank Metallica for that. So, fantastic. So this album here is going to be 40 years old this year. For anyone who has memories of blasting this album through their speakers, whether they be positive or negative, you can leave your thoughts in the comment section below. But if you have never listened to Savage, this is an easy recommendation. Since High Roller Records in 2022 did a nice looking reissue with apparently even some remastering done by one of my favorite audio masters in Patrick W. Engel, you can score yourself a copy of this without having to hunt down an original. Just to check out this classic. So that's it. Hope all of you enjoyed. This is Heavy Thrashhead saying I am out. And I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.